Listen,
Yeah.
we have a very special guest. I want to get to it. We have about an hour together, but I'm hoping that we can spend a little bit longer. We'll see. If Lady Justice had a, oh, this is the honorary reading. We do this with every guest, and Ken is no exception, and we're doing it now. If Lady Justice had a toolbox, Ken W. Good, what? Okay. Tell him he's sorry. As long as he writes the check, I don't care. No, no, as long as he paid me, I don't care. Jason says Wimkin's going to be down for at least till tomorrow. So if you have not had a chance, scoot over. And I got my check, so I'm good. So we're fine. Just kidding. If Lady, one more time, the third time is the charm. If Lady Justice had a toolbox, Ken W. Good would be the guy who forged half the tools and rewrote the instruction manual. He's not a theorist in a tweed coat or some finger-waggling cable news lawyer. He's a Texas bail attorney with rolled-up sleeves, a deep respect for the law, and just enough grit to piss off the reform crowd. Ken earned his BA at Hardin-Simmons, followed by a master's from Tarleton, I think it's how you say it, State, and eventually, because apparently sleep is optional, a law degree from Texas Tech, where he landed a spot on the law review. That was back in the 80s when word processors were the size of microwaves and bail reform wasn't a political buzzword. Since then, Ken's argued cases in front of the Texas Supreme Court, the Court of Criminal Appeals, and even the Fifth Circuit. He's not afraid of a courtroom, but where he really shines is in the gray area between the law and what it says and what people think it says. He wrote the book on it, Goods on Bail, which now sits on the desk of bondsmen, judges, and more than a few state reps trying not to look lost. As a board member of the Professional Bondsmen of Texas, Ken's became the guy legislators call when the reforms they promise voters start releasing. Let's try that again because I just butchered my own sentence. Ken's become the guy legislators call when the reformers they promised voters start releasing career criminals back onto the street. He doesn't gloat. He just calmly explains what happens when you trade accountability for slogans and then sits back while the headlines write themselves. He's been on every podcast and talk show that still values facts over feelings. He doesn't yell. He doesn't posture. He teaches with case law and real data and a voice that could talk a pit bull off a meat truck. But here's the part they don't always mention. Ken's also a father, a proud girl dad. One of his daughters survived a bone marrow transplant as a child, and that changes a man.
Wow.
Makes him see justice not as some abstract idea, but as something personal, real, and fragile. Ken W. Good is living proof that you can be tough and tender, logical and loyal, grounded in law, and still deeply human. In a world full of noise, he's a rare signal. A man who didn't just study justice, he showed up for it. And he's still showing up every damn day, and we are so excited that he showed up to our show. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to introduce you to a new friend of the show, Ken W. Good from Texas. Ken, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for that very generous introduction. And thank you very much for mentioning my daughter. I have two daughters. She is now 20. She's my youngest. She was 5 when she had a bone marrow transplant.
It's incredible. What as a parent, I can't imagine. I mean, 5 years old, you think that maybe at a very young age, 1 or 2, something might come about medically. And then, you get through the teenage years and then they get into a car. But at 5, you kind of maybe think that you might be a little safe. How did you traverse that and tell us a little bit about it?
She was born with a very rare condition called TAR syndrome. So she doesn't make platelets and she's missing the weight-bearing bone in both of her forearms. So we knew something was wrong at her 21-week sonogram. We did a level 2. We confirmed it. We were told we had 2 weeks to decide whether to abort. We're very religious people. So we went to counseling to prepare for her delivery. And with TAR syndrome children, they're supposed to have platelet issues for the first year, and then they just get better. They may not be normal, but they have a lot more platelets. She didn't have a problem her first year. Somewhere around year 4, she just started trailing down. And so year 5, they said we need to have a bone marrow transplant. I had to go back to counseling to prepare for that. I kept a blog for it. And, probably the hardest thing for a dad is there's nothing I could do. Yeah. I mean, we had a donor off of the Be the Match program. Mm-hmm. None of us were a match. And so I had to rely upon the generosity of a complete stranger to provide the most precious gift to my daughter, which was life. Her platelets are today normal. She still has bone. She still has arm issues, but she's a junior in college. She is a gamer, which I don't know if I like, but she's a gamer and she's going to college to study that. And I don't think anybody's getting a job on that right now, but that's okay.
Yeah.
And she works for me part time, and we have been forever changed because of her, and we love her to death.
Well, truly blessed. What an amazing, amazing story. Trials and tribulations. They kind of define us, don't they? Folks, donations are held off because what we never want to do is make our guests feel that we're raising money off of them. So if you want to donate to the show, you can do that as usual, but we'll hold off announcing them until after Ken leaves or we kick him out, one of the two. But I heard he's religious, so we're going to be on our best behavior. I wanted to start it off with Texas. Now, Texas is considered to be its own independent country, not just by the rest of the country, but by Texans. And as a Texan, I like to think that we don't just go to a different beat. We set the drum ourselves and set the beat ourselves. What do you think when it comes to law inside Texas is different than the other 49 states in this union? And is it different, or is there something special that you have to learn on how to kind of present your cases or the way that you overall carry yourself in Texas? And this is a loaded question. I know you know the answer, so I'll just give it to you. Go ahead.
Well, first of all, I've always had a problem with I need to be more shy. I'm not shy. I don't drink, but there's a reason why I don't drink. I can get in trouble stone cold sober.
Yeah.
Drinking absolutely guarantees it. And also, I'm older. I mean, I've always been older than I look. I mean, I graduated from law school at 29. I went to Vegas to celebrate, and they tried to kick me off the gambling floor because they thought I was under 18. So that was 30 something years ago. And so, I mean, I hate it when I do a podcast. People are like, well, you're so young. And I'm like, oh, I don't like to play the game of who's older.
Yeah.
Because I always am the one that's older. I'm 64 years old.
Yeah, you don't
Wow.
You
don't look it.
I don't color my hair. I don't do anything. I just am very lucky genetically.
Asian,
but,
right?
No.
Where's the history? Where's the bloodline from? Because
I mean, look, one of Benjamin Franklin's brothers is one of my great grandfathers. So two different sides of my family go all the way back to the American Revolution. So we're just Texas. I mean, we're just United States born and bred, been here all of our lives. And I just have some lucky genes. That's really it. I mean,
the flowing locks.
Yeah.
Right.
I've kind of let my hair grow out because I think this is my last chance. It is slowly turning white, as you can tell.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, this is my last chance before it all falls out.
Yeah.
But in Texas has always been a conservative state, even when it was a Democrat state. And so so now that we're Republican, it's just that the Democrats didn't have any room for us anymore. But I think the thing that kind of differentiates or makes Texas stand out from other places is we are all about local control. I mean, especially in the bail, front. I mean, we have bail bond boards at the county level, and in the smaller counties, the sheriff runs the whole program. And, we've had some talk about changing the way bail's regulated to make it a statewide. That's never going to happen in Texas because ever since Texas became a state, even before then, we've had local control, and the judges, I mean, the sheriffs and the small counties and the boards in the counties above 110,000 are never going to give up local control. So I think that's a big difference.
So I know Leroy probably has questions too. So bail reform, New York, Chicago are seeing double-digit increases in crime now with bail reform, and that implementation is having a massive impact. So how do you separate compassion, which is what Democrats call it, versus the chaos that compassion ultimately creates? Because law is supposed to be blind, justice is supposed to be blind, and when you implement equity and inclusion and diversity and all that other crap to it, it really muddies the water. So how do we help these states that are completely just cutting their own throat see this?
I think it's very clear now that diversity, equity, inclusion, all that is just code words for put up with more crime.
Yeah, that's fair.
I mean, we're going to grade crime on a scale. And so the lesson is we have to put up with more crime. And who does that hurt? The very minority communities, they get hurt the most of the people they're saying they want to help. This, you know, New York is a great example. They've implemented bail reform, and they did it in the name of we want to protect the poor. But when they do set up those policies, they tie the hands of judges so that they have no discretion, so they can't even address organized crime, career criminals, or gangs in the name of helping the poor. And we're seeing the consequences of that. We know how to fight crime. We know what to do, but we're having police officers and judges. We're seeing their hands tied behind their back so that they can't do what they know to do to defeat crime. And then probably on top of that, we're in those areas where they've, the Democrats have gone through years where they've created a mob, right around election time to say, oh, you're being mistreated. And so you need to get angry and come out and vote in larger numbers for us. And that's what got them elected. Well, now they're losing control over the mobs because as soon as the election was over, they went back to the status quo. Now the mobs are mad at them in their election that they're electing the true believers, the crazy people who, who swallowed or drank the Kool-Aid. And so now they're the ones that's, that are advocating these policies that don't make sense, that they know don't work, but it's all politics at this point.
A quick one, and then Leroy's. Progressive DAs and these politicized judges. Now, I'm not going to sit here, I'm not dumb. I understand that there are conservative judges out there, and they make decisions all the time. We've seen some things that are literally unconstitutional that has been done in Alabama and other states that are more conservative leaning, and they've been struck down by the state Supreme Court. Okay, fine. But this is a little bit different. This is when you have prosecutors not prosecuting crime and actually trying to fudge the numbers. So is there a way to impact these cities like Chicago, like New York, like California that are running these progressive DAs and these politicized judges? Or is it literally to a point that this is going to be generational change? Or is there a faster solution, do you think?
Okay, so first of all, it's very, very organized. I mean, George Soros, he's not just the boogeyman. He has this whole network, and they have 4 different groups. They have the groups that recruit soft on crime candidates, and then give them a whole bunch of money, and they get 4 times the money that any of these races have ever spent before, and they're focusing on deep blue areas, so all they got to do is win the primary. And then once they're elected, they're invited to seminars, forums, where they're given, here's your packet of, here's the policies we expect you to enact, quid pro quo. And then they have the third group that issues all these research papers, research studies that say implementing these policies, it will not increase crime. And then they have this fourth group that tells them how to sell it to the voters. They've been very successful, but it's now come out. I mean, the shelf life on one of these DAs is 1 or 2 terms, and they either get recalled or defeated. And the good news is that the next candidate is usually a strong on crime DA, even if it's in a Democrat area. Look at the Gascon just got defeated.
Right.
He got embarrassed defeated, and his replacement is a strong opponent to crime DA.
Well, hopefully Beto O'Rourke will run again because we definitely need someone of his caliber in office. Well, we have Dan Crenshaw. That's kind of close. And listen, Dan, you deserve it. I defended you for years, buddy. You're a team guy. We love you, but come on, man. Some of the stuff you're doing. Real quick, I hate to do this, Ken, but we are an interactive show and we have comments from the crowd. And it's important when people spread things that aren't necessarily true. Amber over on YouTube, you're saying that the Republicans struck down the Epstein case release. First of all, this isn't true. There's 2 reasons. There was a procedural vote, and a procedural vote is a very dangerous thing. And I'll explain it why in just a few minutes. And the second thing is that it was attached to a cryptocurrency over-regulation bill, and it was snuck in by Mo Kahana. And it was just a ruse to go ahead and put the vote on the floor and make Republicans look bad. And you bought it hook, line, and sinker. So congratulations on that. And you can take a picture with your booby prize. But stop spreading stuff like this because you're wrong. And that's why you come to this show, is to learn those things. So naughty, stop spamming the chat. Leroy, do you have some questions for Ken?
I do. I was listening to everything you say. I take notes as I go. And
I saw you writing.
Yeah.
He does a lot of that.
Question. Does when we're talking about bail reform in Texas versus, say, some of the other bluer states, New York, California. What do you see as the most harmful policies by comparison that has been enacted in those states, and what would you like to see changed?
Good
Well,
question.
Texas has gone the opposite. Sorry, Texas has gone the opposite direction of these soft on crime states. They have strengthened the criminal justice system and strengthened accountability. So they've gone the opposite direction. We've done it twice now. We just entered or passed a package in this session that just ended in June, and we'll have something on the ballot, a constitutional amendment, and then we did something 2 sessions ago. So what the people in the other areas are doing, they're enacting what I call simple release mechanisms. So like in California, it's mandating release without bail or release on zero bail. So you're just being released on your promise, and there's no financial incentive. I mean, there's no financial penalty if you don't come back. And then in New York, they call it release on no bail. And so what they do is they enact a list of crimes that say, if you're charged with one of these crimes, you will be released on simple release, no matter whatever they call it in their state. And the problem with that is there's no accountability, and
Right.
it's a release. It's a charge-based release mechanism system. So no matter how many times you commit that crime, you get the same release. So judges can't say you're a career criminal, so I'm not going to release you on simple release. I'm going to hold you, or I'm going to increase your bail. You can't do that in that system because the statute says if you're charged with this, this is what you get. And that's how we tie the hands of judges so that they, in the name of protecting the poor, but prevents them from being able to address career criminals, organized crime, or gangs, and those groups figure out ways to make millions of dollars off of this. I mean, one of the things that Gascon's group requires is you will not do enhancements like on drug charges. So if you're the drug dealer and they catch you with 20 pounds of meth, you would go to jail for 20 years because of the enhancements. But because of the Soros policies, they no longer seek enhancements. So you just get 2 weeks like a regular drug user. And, drug dealers, that's just a cost of doing business. They don't care about that. I mean, 2 weeks, yeah, let's go back to, I'll see you in 2 weeks. I get a vacation. I mean, it's that kind of short-sighted with these little feel-good things that they, are selling that are actually doing great harm because criminals see that as a green light to commit more crime.
It's almost like it's unintended consequences for trying to sell a voter on, hey, we're going to make things more fair for everyone.
I agree. Originally, I would have agreed with you, but over time, as it has shown that it's a huge failure, these same politicians won't come in and say, okay, it didn't work, so let's try something else.
Yeah,
right.
I mean, we even have data now. We have the Yolo County DA in California kept all of his data during COVID, and he compared someone released on simple release mechanism, which is just your promise, versus someone released on a surety bond, and similar charges, nonviolent offenses. Someone released on simple release had a 200% greater chance of committing a violent offense, a new violent offense in the next 18 months versus somebody released on a private surety bond. And I think the difference is the involvement of family. These people are, I like to say they're lost children, they're problem children. But when you have somebody in your family standing up for you and saying, I still think you have a chance, you can turn this around. I still believe in you. I mean, that's worth its weight in gold.
It's a really interesting point that you made in regards to politicians, not coming back and saying, listen, we tried this. Here's what we found. Here are the things we're going to keep. Here are the things, because that's how supposedly, the bread is made. But there is a risk assessment that has to be done on one's own policies. But it's interesting. Instead of admitting that those things are failing, they're actually using artificial intelligence now to do risk assessment. And not have that personal touch of somebody sit down and review a case and actually identify the things that would either elevate or get assigned to the case at a higher level. And they're using this AI. So isn't this another form of exactly what you were just talking about, trying something like using artificial intelligence that's run by the tech elites? What does that mean for due process? And how do you feel about artificial intelligence doing the job of what a prosecutor should be doing?
Well, we've been using artificial intelligence or, these algorithms for after conviction for a while to tell the courts what services you need to turn yourself around. But it's a new thing that we've been doing risk assessments on whether you should be released using an algorithm. And I mean, all the large tech companies have come out with a joint statement saying they should not be used as a part of pretrial release. And the reason why is the algorithms, are very good at predicting what groups think, but they're very bad at predicting what one person will do. And since they rely upon what the group does, there is a racial element to what the AI is predicting. And so it has that component, which has been heavily criticized. And I think all of the science on that says they should not be used anymore. But we still have the tech companies pushing them, or these
and naturally Democrats
policy
want it.
advocates pushing.
Naturally, Democrats want it, right? Anything that they can. Well, it's not just that. I mean, I understand what you're saying, but it is being pushed, and ultimately, things that we're using for AI for today would never have been considered 10 years ago. I mean, implanting Neuralink into somebody's brain. They would have considered that something Dr. Frankenstein 20 years ago, and now that they're using artificial models and things. And listen, AI has its place. I'm not saying it doesn't, but my point is when it's due process, it's always
didn't
nice.
We have a movie on this where a movie was predicting who was going to commit crime, and there's a very fine line between these.
Right.
We're making a prediction on whether you're going to commit another crime, so we're going to release, or not going to commit a crime, so we're going to release you instead of hold you, and that's kind of crosses the line in my book.
I agree with you. 100%.
You know what? It's susceptible to politics because it's not transparent.
Well, we also don't know who's writing the code. Right. And so if it's an amalgamation of thousands of opinion that aren't based in principle and law, and it's not precedent, well, it immediately contradicts itself for what law is supposed to be. Law is supposed to be blind. It's supposed to be, it's a judicial process. It isn't some clairvoyant, voodoo magic through a magic 8-ball. So.
Yeah, but that's a good point because, when governments like the state of New Jersey enacted a risk assessment, they were one of the first. And the problem is they later changed the law, which would have required the risk assessment to be reprogrammed, but they didn't have the money for that. And so anytime you change the law, if you're using an algorithm, then who's going to pay for the reprogramming of it? And a lot of times the advocacy groups, they don't want it changed. They didn't care if you change the law or not. They don't want the algorithm changed because they're manipulating it. It's doing what they predict. And the biggest thing is, like Texas law requires you to take into consideration the severity of the crime they're accused of. Well, most risk assessments don't take into consideration the crime you're accused of because you haven't been found guilty.
Right.
And so they've just made a decision, well, we're not going to take into consideration that crime because you haven't been found guilty. And that's contrary to Texas law.
Interesting. Leroy. Oh, I got a quick one from an audience. I got a quick one from the audience. Is that okay, Leroy, so I can save you?
Yeah, go ahead.
While you think of another one. Do you know Dog the Bounty Hunter?
I do know him.
I had a feeling. How was your first interaction? I remember the first time I met Dog on Colfax in Colorado, and we were with Roger and Sheila was fixing our radiator for our Subaru, and she was a bail bonds person, and like most, they have secondary jobs. And Dog the Bounty Hunter walks in. Beth wasn't there at the time, and I just looked at him and I said, "Holy crap, who is this guy?" But can you give us our time the first time you met Dog?
Well, I mean, Dog is a bigger than life personality, probably as a result of his television show for now. I would say he's not, I think he would like to be the face of the bail industry. He's not, he's a recovery agent. So in Texas, bail bondsmen cannot recover their people. So they have to hire somebody to do that. And sometimes that's him. And think that's enough. He's a big personality. I always say when you get a bondsman full of room, you got a room full of hot air. He would take that to the next level, and Beth would too. Beth passed away with cancer.
Yep, she did.
God bless her soul. But I'm telling you right now, if Beth didn't like you, she'd go for the jugular. If she didn't agree with you, she'd go for the jugular. And I'm surprised I'm still standing a couple of times.
Yeah. He's a big dude. He's not, what I'm talking about is just stature, right? Not super tall, but just he's a pretty big kid. The Bail Project, springing felons all over the country. What do you think about this? And are there so many high level things right now that the low hanging fruit are just being missed? But it is corrupt, man. You've got these projects.
Well, the Bail Project is an example of one of many charitable bail funds.
Yeah, can you explain to everybody what it is so they understand real quick?
Sure. A charitable bail fund is a group that's raised money, and so they offer to pay the bail of someone who can't afford to bail. So they post usually cash bonds. So if your bond is $1,000, you could go to a bondsman and pay a premium, or you could just post cash for the whole $1,000. And a lot of times, or in some places like the Bail Project, they would just post the bond in cash for $1,000 to get people out. Um, we've always had charitable bail funds in our history, but the problem is they've never had any money. It wasn't until the George Floyd, you can call them protests, you can call them riots, whatever they were, and then we had the vice president say, "Please give money to these charitable bail funds. We're going to need this money. We're going to be bonding out a lot of people," and they ended up bonding out nobody. And so suddenly these funds had tens of millions of dollars and nowhere to put it because they had raised it to give it to bond out people that they ended up not having to bond out because the charges were all dropped. And so they found out very quickly that a lot of the rhetoric that they've been saying and repeating was just false. There's low-level people stuck in jail. That's why we need this money. Well, they found out that they're not, which is what we've been saying. So they started bonding out the people that no one else would bond out, which is the career criminals. And that's why they got themselves in a bunch of trouble. Indiana placed restrictions on what charitable bail funds can bond out because they had some incidences of them bonding out career criminals and them doing what career criminals do. And they sued. So they limited them to only a certain size bond, and mostly misdemeanors would be what it would fall to. And they filed suit saying that statute was unconstitutional, and it was upheld on federally. And so I think that, and then what you said, the corruption, I mean, they just end up giving the majority of that money in salaries or buying properties, and then they have a short shelf life because they're not going to raise that kind of money again. And so you see like the Bail Project withdrawing from areas to not post bail because they're every year they have less money.
Do you think there's something that needs to be done on the federal level? They heard they upheld Indiana at the federal level, but do you think this is going to require national attention and legislation needs to be
The longer
created?
we go, the less money they're going to have. So, I mean,
kind of like BLM.
I think it's one of those things that fixes itself over time.
Yeah, usually these fly-by-nights, they pop up very quickly and then they go by the wayside. Corruption keeps up to them. But once again, I would rather have it be that we had systems in place that could catch them before they do the damage that they do, because let's face it, a lot of these places get inundated and saturated. So one other question I have for you, then I'm going to kick it over to Leroy. When you look at Donald Trump and what he's doing for immigration, what he's doing for the border, how would you rate him based? Because I've had a chance to listen to you on other podcasts.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah, because I know how you rate Biden, but my audience doesn't, so let them know. So why don't you give me just your overall opinion on how President Trump is doing versus Joe Biden, and then how he stands on his own merit?
Okay, so let's start with, in 2016, I reluctantly voted for Trump. I wish he'd kept his mouth shut. He was pretending to be a politician. He wasn't doing it very good. Tick for tat. He just couldn't let anything go. 2020, I voted for Trump because I thought he was being mistreated. 2024, I would have crawled over broken glass to vote for Trump.
Most of us are in the same boat.
I like DeSantis, but it wasn't his time. It was Trump's time, and I was a Trump man the whole way. And I mean, I have a big client that was like, "No, I'm not," and I'm like, "I'm sorry, but it's Trump." Trump all the way. Yep. And I would say on the immigration issue, there are so many similarities between the immigration issue and criminal justice reform, bail reform, that it is incredible. And the biggest one is it's these same groups. If you Google immigration and crime, you're going to see all of these articles and all these studies from the same groups that do studies on criminal justice reform. And they're all going to say, illegal immigration does not increase crime. Just like they say bad bail reform does not increase crime. I mean, it's pseudoscience. And so we learned very quickly, because Biden said we can't fix the border. We have to have a new bill. We can't do it without a bill. And so we found out that we didn't need a new bill. We needed a new president. And that's really the same on criminal justice reform, bail reform. We can get control of crime. We just have to let good cops do what good cops do, just like we have allowed good immigration reform policies to be enacted by those that are looking after what's best for the country.
Hmm.
So 10 out of 10 for Trump, and I would say 12 out of 10. Trump's hit it out of the park on immigration and closing the border.
I love that you said that we don't need new legislation. That was Joe Biden's thing, right? We need just give me the money. Give me more money. Just pass the legislation. Yeah, it's typical.
Yeah, but when you looked at the bill was all just fake. It would have increased the number of people that came in. We have 0 people that are being released, caught and released right now. That would have required like 5,000 a day before we could close the border. I mean, it was just fake. I mean, it would have done the opposite of what they said. 86% of the money went to foreign countries. Intended. Yeah.
Yeah, foreign countries were getting. We 16 different countries would have their borders enforced and walls enforced versus the United States. I'm with you, man. The bill was absolute crap.
Yeah.
Leroy, go ahead.
If there was like a policy that you felt at a federal level, even though Trump is in charge and even though the stars seem to be in alignment right now, if there was one policy that you could say that is detrimental to Texas right now, what would it be and in what way? Like, do you think that Texas law enforcement is in any way overpowered as opposed to the rights of the citizens? If you see what I'm saying.
Sure. I'm trying to think. I mean, I think a lot of states are being harmed with this ping pong ball of immigration enforcement when we have Obama enforced immigration laws very good until his last year in office, and then suddenly stopped.
It's true.
And then we had Trump 1, and then Biden. I mean, Biden was sold to us as a moderate, and he's led as a far left liberal. And so he just quit enforcing anything to do with the border. So this ping pong ball where we are right now of enforcement, non-enforcement. The states can't do anything because it's the federal government's responsibility. I would love to see something that says if the federal government abrogates its responsibility to the border of a border state, the border state can step in and do the job that the federal government is not doing. Because one of the things in the big beautiful bill was a reimbursement to Texas for all the money that it spent doing the job that the federal government refused to do. And, if I don't know if you realize this, but anything that Biden claimed on success at the border, it was only because of what Texas was doing when he wouldn't. So he was claiming the success. He was lying that I'm having all this success about the border, and it's because what Texas was doing in spite of him.
Yeah.
Right. Almost in defiance of him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, the greatest was the Supreme Court talking about the concertina wire, and they're like, no, you can't have that concertina wire. You have to take that down with no provision that you can just literally replace it with something else. So, I mean, you kind of knew that SCOTUS was going to come through. A lot of people were really, really hard on the transition between Biden and Trump on the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court has knocked it out of the park. I mean, if people really
they really have.
Our Supreme Court is fantastic. First of all, if you take a look at the last 100 years, we've had the Supreme Court for like 20% of the time, less than that, actually 19, not a full majority. So this is the first time, and Donald Trump did that. A lot of people forget. They talk about the Abraham Accords. They talk about the economy. They don't talk about what he did for generational change on SCOTUS. Can you tell us a little bit about, as a person who gets to see it from the purview of what you do every single day, how big what were those nominations that he put on the bench?
Well, I mean, look at Gorsuch. He was the attorney general for Biden, and he was a political hack. He was scheduled to be he was nominated. He was scheduled to be on the Supreme Court. And, we can say we don't like McConnell all we want, but he held that up until Trump was elected. So,
you mean Garland?
But for Mitch, Garland, yes.
Gorsuch.
Garland,
listen, it started with a G. I get it. I just want to make sure.
I'm terrible at names. I would be a great name dropper if I could just remember names.
Dude, I'm the same way.
Yeah, the U.S. attorney. The attorney general was appointed by Biden to be on the Supreme Court, and was it by Biden or by Obama?
It was Obama.
It was Obama, and Mitch McConnell held up his nomination and said, "We're not going to do anything until there's an election." If there had been a Democrat-controlled Senate, he would have been confirmed, and that would change the face just that alone. Yeah. And then Trump has nominated several more. He's been unhappy with Amy, Barrett, whatever her name is, but
Amy Coney Barrett.
Amy Coney Barrett, but she's done a really, she's a strong conservative.
She's voted with him 96% of the time. How much better can you get?
But here's the comment I make is so much the public doesn't know how to trust the courts anymore, because everything, if you don't like the ruling, they're not valid anymore. It's ridiculous. But if you look at the difference between Republicans' use of the courts and the Democrats' use of the courts, the Republicans have used the courts when a Democrat's in office to stop them from doing things that are illegal. And usually Biden has a good example on the student loans. He started out for the first couple of years saying, I can't do this. It's not, I don't have the power. Yeah. And then he came in, well, the Congress won't act, so I'm going to do it. Well, it didn't change the fact that you didn't have the power to do it. And so when they're suing to stop him from doing something illegally. When the Democrats are suing, 9 times out of 10, they're doing it to delay. There's 1,400 and so many days in a 4-year term. They're filing suit to delay, and then, that pushes it off one more day. And so their hope is to get to the next election and win the election. And you saw it really bad with this judge when the big, beautiful bill passed, and she did a TRO on they can't cut funding against Planned Parenthood, even though the bill cut the funding and it was enacted. So you got one judge taking on the 2 other branches of government, and her TRO said nothing. Usually a TRO has to comply with the rules of civil procedure and has to say all these things. She did not do that. She just said, stay. And she did it so that they couldn't take it to the Court of Appeals, because when Trump first got into office, they started filing these TROs. A TRO cannot be appealed. That's why they were issuing TROs and then delaying. And so the courts of appeals caught on, and so they started interpreting their TRO to be a preliminary injunction, which isn't appealable, and that's when they started issuing stays, and that's when Trump started winning. And so she was going to keep them from being able to do that, and she's recently amended it. I don't think that's going to stand up very long because it's ludicrous and doesn't have any reasoning, really, from a legal standpoint. She's just, you look at it, and she's being made fun of by legal experts but I think it was completely not orchestrated, but it was planned, and it's, again, delay one more day. He's got only so many days left.
Go ahead, Leroy.
Quick
then
comment
I have a question
on that, because
from the team.
Because that was a strong point that Matt and I had brought up on the show several months back, was that, and you articulated it beautifully, the Democrats do, in fact, use the courts to slow down Republican policy, the formation of it. And Matt and I had noted that when Trump got in this last election, the pace at which he was trying to lay down policy was at such a rapid clip. It was almost, you could tell that it was almost done to outpace those court, the fights that they were going to have in court, that we knew that the Democrats were going to come to bear on it.
See, I think history is going to show that Trump is one of the smartest people that's ever been president.
Oh, yeah.
But on top of that, he'll outwork everybody. His doctor has said he doesn't need that much sleep. So, I don't claim to be the smartest. I just claim I can outwork you. And now as I get older, it's harder for me to work all night. When I was young, if I was mad and stressed, I'd just work all night and work through the stress of getting stuff done. Now it's harder to do that. I think Trump still is able to do that. And so people can't keep up with him. And when he's doing all this work and issuing all these, he's doing the work of a presidential first term in 6 months.
Yeah. Oh, well, he did this in 2016, and people just don't understand all the things he's done. And history will be a lot kinder if Jimmy Carter can re-envision his image. Pretty confident that Donald Trump in 25 years will be able to, but honestly, I don't think he'll need to. He does amazing things.
He's gonna go down as one of the best presidents we've had.
Completely agree.
If the Epstein file does not derail him of stuff, then he's going to go down as one of the greatest presidents we've had, because he's planned for this. Imagine what would have happened if they had just not played games. He had been reelected. There would have been a Democrat House. possibly a Democrat Senate. He would have been impeached one more time, but it wouldn't have been confirmed. He would have been an inconsequential president because he wouldn't have been able to get anything done.
Right.
He had 4 years to plan.
Yep.
I mean, my favorite meme about him is his first term, he was pretending to be a politician. He didn't do a very good job of it. Second term, he's doing exactly what he knows. He's taken over a bankrupt business.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
God, that's a good example.
It is a good example. Tom Shin says, what is a TRR? Temporary restraining order or recusal order?
It's a temporary restraining order. It's only good for so many days, and then they have to have a hearing for a preliminary injunction. So in a federal lawsuit, or even in state lawsuit in Texas, when you file suit, you ask for a TRO, which is to stay a temporary restraining order to keep everything the way it is until the court can have a hearing to determine whether there should be a preliminary injunction. The TRO is not appealable. The preliminary injunction can be appealed immediately to the Court of Appeals. And all these appeals that you're seeing are stays of preliminary injunctions, or most of them have been TROs, which the Court of Appeals are converting to preliminary injunctions and then issuing a stay. I mean, the most recent one the Supreme Court just did about the Education Department, they stayed a preliminary injunction, or a TRO that was converted to a preliminary injunction on appeal.
We had another question. Evelyn says, I think the Constitution covers the states and gives them the right to protect the borders, and federal government does not. Kinda. Article 1, I think it's Section 10, Clause 3, something like that. Look it up. States
How many cases have we had interpreted the opposite, that it's the federal government's job to? I mean, we've got the federal courts and the Supreme Court of the United States saying it's the federal government's job to enforce immigration and not the states. The states can't do it. I think Texas just had a statute that was held unconstitutional at the Supreme Court in the last week of June.
Yeah.
On this very issue.
It does say in times of national emergency or invasion. And if the federal government, who is responsible to declare that, doesn't do that, then that doesn't leave the governors and the states the actual ability to do thus. And this is the problem why limited government and the 10th Amendment should always be our default. But this is what you get. And you know what Texas said? Texas said, screw you. We're going to do it anyway. And
and spent billions of dollars doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's Article 4, Section 4, by the way.
No,
I would like to see.
I don't think that's true.
I mean, I don't think it would stand up, but I'd like to see Trump and his team pass a statute or propose one that says if the federal government abrogates its responsibility to enforcing the immigration reform on the border, the state can step in and do it and bill the federal government, because that would help in the future. Because the danger is the next Democrat president. We need the Democrats to lose one more time so they will moderate. I mean, their biggest problem is they've outsourced policy to these advocacy groups. So they don't really they're not making policy. They're following what their advocacy groups want. And they've got to lose to moderate. They've got to lose at least one more time to moderate.
Real quick. Sorry, Leroy. It's not to prove whose brain is bigger. Article 3, Section 1 of the Constitution established the federal judiciary and grants judicial power to the courts. It gives the federal courts the authority to hear cases and controversies, which include the power to issue equitable relief TROs, is one. And then when we go back to the actual ability to protect its own borders outside the government, Section 10, Clause 3, gives states limited authority to act in the matters of war, defense, if they are actually invaded or imminent danger, and if Congress hasn't acted. So that's what I'm referring to, but let me know if I'm wrong.
I understand. I believe Article 4, Section 4 also does mention that it's the federal government that is supposed to protect the United States from invasion.
Well, I think the other really important ruling, since we're mentioning the Constitution, that came out the last week of June from the U.S. Supreme Court was on this. We call it birthright citizenship, but that wasn't the issue. The issue was nationwide injunctions.
Right.
And I mean, from a law nerd like me, it's really cool to watch how that issue has grown over the years, because it started out with a ruling on the merits and a dissenting judge commenting that we shouldn't have these nationwide injunctions. And so now it's grown from a dissent to a majority opinion. And I mean, I don't know how big of an impact it's going to be, because they're either going to do a class action, but usually that takes a year. But we've seen it took days for one to be done on this issue. I think that it's going to still take some more jurisprudence on that. But I think that was an absolutely needed ruling. And, you know, you can see a lot of what Trump's doing and winning in the courts. there's a danger if the Democrats get in control because, they'll come in and clean house just like Trump did.
Yeah. Well, that's why we got to stop passing executive orders and actually get some legislation through. This hope and pray of single issue bills, we just saw it today. Democrats played dirty, and a procedural vote is a dangerous thing. And if you're doing a on the previous question, gives them the power on a procedural vote to a no vote versus a yes vote, shifts power to the actual opposing party. And what you could have is a situation where they would then have subpoena power. But not only that, they also would essentially defund the big, beautiful bill because they hold the purse strings. So you have to listen, Marjorie Taylor Greene couldn't explain herself out of a wet paper bag. She tried and she completely mucked it up. But it doesn't mean she wasn't right. But that bill specifically, they threw Epstein. It's kind of like the "Don't Say Gay" bill, which didn't say gay on one line at all. They named the bill the Epstein release bill, but what it really was also putting undue legislation on cryptocurrency, which is something that Trump completely ran against. So they attached it to that bill, renamed it, and the Republicans are like, we're not going to do this. The answer is no. And then everyone's like, look, they don't want the Epstein files released. This is now the new political BS of the left. They can't hold on to anything, so now they're going to go ahead and ride Epstein. And wouldn't it be funny if that's what Donald Trump was trying to do, is put it on their heads of releasing all this information, because the political backlash that's going to come from this with all these powerful people who are probably involved in this in some way or another, that'd be pretty ugly. But
I was really worried. I was really worried about Elon Musk coming out and saying Trump's on the list because, I mean,
too much ketamine.
I think, but I think he says that because he knows there's no list, and so it can't be disproven. I think Elon is a one issue. He's a one trick pony. He's all about the EV tax credit. And when he saw Trump was going to win, he threw in with him, trying to convince him to not get rid of the EV tax credit. Trump has told him all along he was going to. When he threw his big fit was because it looked like the bill was going to pass. So I think everything dealing with Elon Musk is being overblown. It's a one issue thing. And his threat to create a new party is the same thing. He just needs to have 2 or 3 House seats and 1 Senate seat, and the Republicans will fall all over themselves.
He's not going to get it, though.
His tax credit.
He's got 4% of the power. This is something I know a little bit about, and Leroy does too, and I'm sure you do. But he only has 4% of the backing right now. Out of that 4%, you're probably looking at 0.75% actually vote, and most of those people will split down party lines. So you're looking at a really small portion. He doesn't have the backing. He doesn't have the time. He has the money.
He can't run. He's not going to run for president. So
I know the party.
He needs to have the run for president, have that prestige, and have that. I don't remember. I can't remember the name of the guy that did it against. That helped Clinton get elected because
Ross Perot.
It was Ross Perot that got Clinton elected, instead of George
and that
Bush
damn saxophone on frickin' Johnny Carson, Arsenio Hall, was pretty damn good. I mean, come on, man. Listen, I'll just go ahead and I'll blow that saxophone like Monica. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
He's a pig.
Terrible president.
Well, what he did in the military.
But he was a moderate.
Right. I'll take Bill Clinton over anybody we've had in the last 25 years. I mean, he's a pig, but at least you're right. He was a blue-collar Democrat.
We have to get over the idea of actually liking the person that you're voting for just based off of whatever their policies or their politics are.
Oh, shut up, Leroy. Come on, it's a popularity contest. No, you're right.
Hey, that's a good point. I mean, that's a good point. We've been in this little identity politics area for a long time, but the left is really bad about it, saying
they are.
You can't listen to you. Their supporters can't listen to you because you're white, because of this thing that you believe,
Fascism.
And that completely disqualifies you. And then if they can't respond to your arguments, they just call you a racist, which is code for I can't respond to your arguments, but hey, none of my supporters should listen to you because it's now an identity politics thing. Yeah. I think Trump kind of blew that away, and now I think the Democrats are stepping into his trap on these 80-20 issues. The midterms could all be about immigration, which is exactly what Trump wants. The Epstein thing is the first thing that's kind of stuck on the wall since Trump's taken office. So I think the next national or the world thing will take that off the news, and we'll be back to Trump 80-20 issues.
It's amazing, that 80-20 thing. Nobody was saying that 9 months ago. We have an ongoing bet with Fox News that we have a few of their staffers that watch our show, because you'll be amazed. Leroy and I will break shit, and it's on Fox the next night. And we're just like,
Yeah.
There's nobody who's talking about it. And we're
Mhm.
like, come on. And the 80-20 thing was a show that we did. And I said, here's what the Democrats are doing. It's 80-20. And then all of a sudden Charlie Kirk's talking about it and Fox is talking about it. And that's okay. We don't mind. We're small time. We're not that important. And we like to think we're bigger than we are. So Ken, here's first of all, says Ken, is there anything that can be done about George Soros and Son interfering in our politics and our policies? Now, I want you to answer that, but this is where I want to get your take on Citizens United. I'm one of the only Republicans on the planet who believe Citizens United was one of the largest and biggest mistakes Republicans ever did. And they did it in order to give corporations free speech and then turn money into speech. And they did that to compete with Democrats. And Democrats were doing these massive fundraisers and celebrities and these giant billionaire corporations. And Republicans really had oil and gas, big tobacco, and a few others. And by using Citizen United, this really allowed them to go ahead and do massive fundraising. But as we know from the last 3 elections, it's not about money. It's about innovating new ways. And if we take a look in 2016, it was about capturing social media. We look at 2020, it was reaching out to people in regards to who was at home with letters and door knocks, even though there was COVID. And then in 2024, it was all about getting on big podcasts and getting out there in that element. So the question I have for you is Citizens United, do you believe it needs to be repealed? And do you believe, as a lawyer and a constitutionalist, that corporations have free speech and that speech equates to money?
Well, I do believe that there is a level of free speech. I mean, the simplest thing is a business has a right to offer its services to people. I mean, we've seen that in the bail industry where, a bail bond board does not, or they enact a rule, or we pass a state statute saying you can't call family members to offer to invite to bond out their family members. And that was stricken by both the Fifth Circuit and the Texas Supreme Court. So they have a right of commercial speech, and that's already been decided. So businesses have that right. I do think there's too much money in politics, but where the problem is these funds where one billionaire can come in and set up these funds that can throw so much money, and they don't really have to disclose who's giving it. The Soroses of the world. And the original question is, can anything be done about Soros? Soros has been banned from other countries, and he's not looking after what's best for us, even though he says he is. He's not. I mean, how much money or how many billions of dollars did he make off of shorting the UK pound or whatever their currency? And so I mean, there's this theory that he likes to create chaos, and he makes money out of chaos.
Right.
So
blood in the streets.
I question their motives, because when 50% of all murder victims in the United States are young black males, and by and large, the murderer in that situation is also a young black male, and they're advocating for policies that favor the murderer over the victim, and they're setting up policies that actually increase crime and actually hurt the very minority groups that they say they're helping. And they just keep pushing them no matter what science shows. I question their motives. I don't think that they're true. I think that they have different reasons for what they're doing, and it's chaos right now.
Yeah, going back to Elon Musk real quick, and then we're getting on top of our hour here. Did you guys happen to see that with that Joe Rogan spot where they're talking about Elon Musk? And listen, I agree. I think Elon Musk is just a couple cans short of a six-pack, but he obviously is a pretty intelligent guy. But everything that he has done is all about Mars. From his acquisitions it's ridiculous. Like, if you hear it laid out, you're like, holy shit. Like, everything Elon Musk has done, from EV batteries. Well, you're not going to have unlimited energy source, so you go ahead and you invest in EV batteries, and the vehicles there aren't going to be able to be internal combustion engines, so you go ahead and run something that's not going to be having problems in high sand and high rock environment. Then you look at tunnels. You're going to have to live subterranean because you can't live on the surface of Mars until it terraforms. So he's actually knows how to dig tunnels. You take a look at his rockets in order to get there. Yeah, you take a look at Neuralink and artificial intelligence, which you're absolutely going to need for stimulation and having people sleep during rides and also getting rest in a very extreme hostile environment. I mean, like, everything that he's doing is all about going to Mars. And when you see that master plan, you kind of got to go, that's pretty impressive, right? I mean, it doesn't matter. It's kind of crazy at the same time, but it's it's kind of Da Vinci next level type codex in his thought process. That's pretty impressive.
I agree with what you're saying on that, but doesn't that also the comparison between Elon Musk and Trump just make Trump look even better?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you look at how smart he is, how he's held it together, how he doesn't back away from a fight, but also look at his family. I mean, I don't like to compare anybody's families, but look at the family situation for Elon Musk, where he's sacrificed business for his family. And Trump, I mean, to a certain extent has too, because he's had multiple wives. But oh my God, do we have any family that we compare to Trump that has the children that have turned out so great?
Yeah, no.
And I mean, and to hear one of his granddaughters talk about how she and her grandfather Trump have bonded over golf, and when she's not on his team, he tries to get in her head, and she has to remind him that she's a Trump too.
That's right.
I'm like,
it's great,
I aspire to have that kind of relationship with my children and with my family, and I hope I do. But I mean, I just can't say enough nice things about Trump as a result of that comparison.
Oh yeah, we're big fans.
It sounded to me like when Elon first, kind of really popped up on everyone's radar, was that he was really invested in the idea of, hey, when the U.S. first invented microchips, right? That was largely a government-funded type invention.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with the CCD camera. Same thing with GPS or DARPANET. Sending the first email. And so it sounded a lot like he was going to, if he pushed the scientific edge, that maybe he might get some government funding somewhere along the way. And when you read his book back from 15, 20 years ago, I think it was actually titled Musk. Matt is absolutely correct. One of his goals that has never stopped from being at the forefront was travel to Mars. So when Trump comes in and says, "Hey, look, we're going to cut back on some of your tax breaks," right? And think about the businesses that he has involved with the government, between SpaceX, between Gigafactory, Starlink. And he does own a TBM machine, a tunnel boring machine company, which you had mentioned. So it's interesting that we as Republicans have kind of looked at Elon and said, your time may have come, because of the way you've kind of turned on the president. It'll be interesting to see how that plays out in the next 2-3 years, given that Democrats love to use that punchline. They love to say that billionaires run this country, right? If Trump has kind of pushed him to the side, will that optic be brought to light? Will that be used at some point against the Democrat punching the same line that they tend to use over and over again, which is favoritism for billionaires?
We've had a history in our country of very wealthy men, and when they kind of get to the end of their life, they kind of go crazy.
Howard Hughes.
Howard Hughes is the best example.
Collected his own urine in jars. We're a little weird.
Yeah.
Well, I'm saying, you could argue with the catamine thing that, that there's some evidence that Musk is kind of going down that road. And then you compare Trump, and, you would expect, as long as Trump has been alive, you would expect some of those, that strangeness in his personal life. And that's why I think people were proposing this peeing in the bed story or whatever that was just
the P tapes.
The P tapes, completely false. And maybe some Democrats still believe it, but I mean, I just think, again, Trump in comparison comes out as such a brilliant and normal person who's so comfortable with himself. And I aspire to be that way.
Well, yeah. Listen, once again, you're not going to hear a lot of negative about Donald Trump in this show. I mean, we call balls and strikes. And, we do. We've I was absolutely just screaming at his campaign. And luckily, about 18 months out, which he had no chance of winning until he brought Corey Lewandowski back. And once he brought Lewandowski back, Lewandowski brought him back home and really gave him that energy he had in 2016, which was focusing on the middle and stop allowing the Democrats to dictate the conversation. But when Musk, I'm not going to harp on Musk. He's done some good things, but Moldavi said it best when he said, paraphrasing here, it's not an exact quote, but he said jesters and Rasputin don't get to sit on the throne. So
and I keep making comparisons, and I need to stop, but let's just make one last comparison.
No, you have to stop. You said it.
I think in our personal lives, when we have a crisis, it shows who we really are as a person. When our daughter needed a bone marrow transplant.
Yeah.
It showed we learned who we were as people.
Oh,
We
yeah.
could rely on each other.
Yeah.
But we've got a personal crisis comparison, with Trump and with Elon Musk, and Elon Musk kind of seemed to have a little bit of a meltdown or, threw a little bit of a hissy fit.
Got
And then
punched.
we've got Trump that has had so many personal things attached to him. They tried to take him out in every which way, including tried to kill him. And Trump has withstood every bit of that in a way that I don't think any other candidate in the country or even the world could have been able to withstand it. And especially no other Republican would have been able to withstand the attacks that he had for the last 3 years.
You're absolutely right.
And I agree with him when he says, if I hadn't run for president, none of this would have happened. I agree with that. I agree with it 100%. And when the Court of Appeals rules that is 40 something, whatever, 30 something felony things are reversed, you're going to hear me talk loud and high about all these people that owe him an apology, and you're not going to get an apology from a single one of them.
Fair enough.
But he showed his true character. He withstood it. He stood up, and he did what he thought was right. I don't think anybody else could do that.
That's
Fair
completely
enough.
fair. Yeah.
Brian Scott, I'm not going to get into the Van Allen belt, dude, but this Van Allen belt thing has completely been blown out of proportion. But let me give you a sizable understanding of why the Van Allen belt and the Apollo missions. By the way, it wasn't just one mission. We went there 9 times. So you're going to have to disprove all of those too. But my lieutenant colonel pilot brother-in-law, before we were estranged, said it very, very well. He's like, the Van Allen belt is essentially a pothole for a car in the road or turbulence in the sky for a plane. And although is dangerous and you don't want to lag there and stay there, there are spots in the Van Allen belt that you can get through without prolonging your stay there. And they just got extremely lucky. But it's not like you go through the Van Allen belt and all of a sudden you're irradiated and everybody's melted into liquid goo. I'm not going to argue the Apollo missions. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a rocket scientist. But what I do know is how to read. I know how to disseminate logically. And Leroy and I are pretty damn good at what we do. When we consume something, we pick it apart until we feel comfortable that it's real. I feel very confident as I was at the Griffith Observatory and I was able to actually manually launch a laser at the moon and get a reflection back from the little small laser reflectors we actually placed on the moon. So I feel pretty comfortable as a logical person that those weren't there because we threw them there and hope they went into orbit and landed, that we actually wound up landed on the moon. But that's just me. Leroy, go ahead. And then we're going to a couple things and then we'll wrap it up. Go ahead, Leroy.
Sure. The guy that sits behind me at work, he actually used to design a couple of the satellites that were in use up until about 5-6 years ago. I actually do a lot with orbiting vehicles, and I will tell you that to design something that would contend with the Van Allen radiation belts, it's not that big a deal. We know that they're there. We know roughly what type of radiant intensity would have to be contended with, and so long as they know that, then there's a plan.
Yeah, we just had a satellite get closer to the sun than we've ever been before. You've got pictures coming back from Mars.
Touch the sun.
Yeah, every single day. So we have the technology that we had back then. People want to say, well, the technology wasn't good enough to do what they did. Well, go tell that to the Wright brothers. Tell that to the Montgolfier brothers when they went up in their first balloon. It's never good enough. But people and pioneers take risks. Otherwise, we would probably all be speaking a foreign language, or there would be Inuits here instead of the American, Native, and Europeans. So let's just relax.
Well, but this is an example of what when conspiracy theories get embedded and they're so impossible to overcome, and the risk of the Epstein files. We've had when somebody says they're on my desk waiting for the review. Now we're saying they're not. They never were on my desk. They didn't exist. I mean, you lose all credibility, and that's the stuff that creates these conspiracy theories. And I mean, I'm kind of at the point where we're not going to be able to convince people about this conspiracy, that it's not a conspiracy theory, without releasing something, which then confirms it was a conspiracy theory. And some story came out today that they had tested the raw footage on the video of his cell and found minutes that had been altered. So it's,
Yeah,
I mean,
2 minutes and 45 seconds now versus the
Yeah.
1 minute. I actually saw that. We're going
Yeah.
to talk about that tonight. Yeah.
So it's just another example of the danger of a conspiracy theory. And what a conspiracy theory is, when transparency does not satisfy a group of people, and it becomes to the point where they don't trust anybody on it. And that's where we pretty much are now on the Epstein files.
We got to do something else really quick. Brian, this is the last one I'm doing. We have an honored guest here, and you're tickling my funny bone. The moon isn't out in space. Yes, it is. It's 240,000 miles away. It's past the Kármán line, 62 miles up. I don't know what you want from me. Yes, it is. Brian, you wrote me one of the nicest emails in the world. Like, holy crap, I love the show. You guys are always so factual. Right? You don't want to play with me on this. I will destroy you. Love. Don't do the Kennedy assassination, and don't do the moon landing. Just don't do it, bro. It's just it absolutely is space. Okay.
We have a high tide and a low tide that conclusively proves we have a moon.
That's it. And you can see the gravitational pull of tide. And tide is interesting. People think that it just happens on one side of the earth. It isn't. It's literally a circle that pulls the water up, become the gravitational pull, and goes around the earth. It's not half of the earth, literally the water rises. That's not the way it works. And the displacement of that water creates a low tide or a high tide based upon that. And if you just follow that principle, you know there's a moon, you know it's circle, you know the earth is round, and then we're good to go. Or if you've been in a ship like Leroy and I have, we've seen the horizon and we've sailed to it, and we did not fall off. Leroy, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm still here.
Well, I would say people at one time believed the earth was square, and they believed that if you got to the edge, you fell off. And that was the majority view. And there were some early people that just used math. I mean, I hate math. I have a father and a brother who have degrees in math, and I'm an attorney because I can't do math.
Yeah.
But a lot of these things are answered by math. I mean, low tide, high tide, math proves we have a moon. I mean, math is the answer, and I hate that I'm even saying that.
Ken, last time, with all the photographs that we've had of a lunar eclipse, how many have you seen that literally have been as thin as a quarter? You think at one time the position of the Earth would have been the flat sphere of the light, so therefore it'd be casting a small quarter-like shadow on the Earth. Well, it's never happened. It's always a full circle. I wonder why that is. It's really not hard to figure this shit out. So here's a couple rapid-fire questions, and I'm going to let you go, Ken. One of the big things we do here on the Don't Unfriend Me Show is you get a final minute and kind of say what you want. I want to hear about your podcast. I want to hear about your website. I want to give you a little more time. So we're probably going to give you 2 or 3 minutes to tell us a little bit more about you, because we want to promote your podcast here. We also want to ask you a question that is a time-honored tradition. Pizza, is it supposed to have pineapple on it, yes or no?
Absolutely not. It should be against the law to have
pineapple
on that.
That's right.
Pizza.
That's the only answer.
But I will say
no, don't say anything else. You nailed it.
I'm a double pepperoni pizza eater, and that's all I am. Double pepperoni. I mean,
you're good.
Just regular pepperoni is not enough. I have to have double.
You're set. You hear that, Liv? Ken doesn't like you. We don't do pineapple on pizza. It's fascist. All right. You've got your 2 minutes. First of all, we want you to come back. We would love for you to do this again sometime. We need our experts. We need people who understand the law, and we would love to have you back sometime. But why don't you take a couple of minutes, tell us about your podcast and what you're working on, and then we'll wrap it up.
Well, let me start with just this little story, since you're going to give me a couple of minutes. I was in Houston, and there was a hearing in a case called O'Donnell versus Harris County, and it turned out to be one of the early cases where these advocates were trying to force bail reform through a court hearing. And I went and I listened to the hearing, and the judge actually scared the crap out of me, because I thought she was wrong on the issue. She was applying the law incorrectly. And so I came out and I just started yelling alarm, alarm, alarm. And what we discovered through that is, if we're not telling our story, nobody else is. Because since then, that judge has now been reversed 7, 8, or 9 times in that case. And the Fifth Circuit ultimately ruled it should have never been filed in federal court. And for a while, that case was the seminal case cited all over the country. And so we decided we need to start telling our own story. And so we have... we highlight important criminal justice stories on our website, which is pbtx.com, which is the Professional Bondsmen of Texas.com. We have our own podcast. There's a link to it on the menu, but you can also go to thebailpost.com. All we talk about is criminal justice reform, what works, what doesn't work. If you want to know what the New Jersey plan is, We have a podcast on it. You want to know why nobody has suggested the New Jersey plan since they did it? It's because it's so expensive and they had to do a tax increase and then ran out of money again. So all the reform since then has been New Jersey light because they don't want to spend the money that they did. And nobody wants to talk about those issues. We know what works. We teach what works, but we have advocates pushing to do things that cause crime to increase because they're throwing a lot of money at politicians. And nobody's talking about that. And so we're trying to educate the public and legislators on what is good policy and what is crazy. And most of the stuff we're hearing about right now is crazy. But thank you for allowing me to come in and meet y'all and participate and play along tonight because it was a lot of fun.
Where do we rank in the? I've watched some of the podcasts and I'll tell you, I think I already know the answer. But seriously, don't you don't need to lie to us. Where do we rank on the podcasts you've been on? Because I've seen some of them. And man,
you absolutely need to lie.
I'm not. Listen, I'm not egotistical. Well, I am egotistical, but I think our podcast does a really good job. Where do you, from knowledge, from presentation, from music? Come on, it's okay. You can tell us. Ken, give us a rating.
Well, okay, so I rank podcasts from, whether we have an intelligent conversation, whether they call me a racist, or whether we have a lively, respectful conversation. And, just on your introduction alone, you've got to be way, way up there. But look, y'all are smart, you're intelligent, and so it's really fun and easy when you're talking to smart people who want to challenge me and then call me when they call me on stuff when they think I might be wrong and make me work for it. I mean, that's what I love. I actually like going to podcasts that are from the left where they will like to have an argument. But I've done a debate before where it was with a civil rights court attorney who's one of these advocates that file suits all over the country. And she couldn't respond to my arguments. So by the end of the debate, she would just call me a racist. And I'm like, they were calling jails cages. I mean, you can't have a civil debate in that situation.
No, not when they shut the conversation down like that. That's what we, what's funny is that I just watched Nick Fuentes go on with Candace Owens and Nick is pissed and he has every right to be because Candace just set him up. And I'm not a Nick Fuentes fan at all. I mean, I've had the Groyper army after me and we've taken them down systematically and they don't come here anymore because they know they'll get whomped. But what I'll say is I hear all these people who go into the fray and they don't establish the rules. And the first thing I would do is say, listen, I just have one question before we start. Are you able to change your mind? And can you please explain to me a time that you have? And if they don't sit there and go, absolutely, here's this time, I'm like, we're done because this isn't a debate.
My favorite thing is to go to a podcast that's leaning left. And at some point they'll say, I agree with that.
Right.
You make a good point about that.
That's amazing.
I mean, okay, I'm in heaven when that happens. And that's not going to be y'all.
Because you feel like you've changed minds.
Yes.
We'll
and that's what happens when you have a civil conversation and you both express your views because they'll find out that they've been led astray.
Right. Well, and self-discovery is truly the best way to learn something. You can force things down. You can have a complete idiot. You can give him all the tools. You can give him the college. You can give him the car. Give him the tie. Give him the bleakers. Give him everything he needs to be successful. And in the end, all you have is a motivated idiot. So,
and that's the difference between having an actual conversation or in written form, it'd be peer review, but having an actual conversation versus something like just letting an argument devolve into name calling. You just suck. Well, that's not going to help anything.
If the money's good enough. Folks, you can find Ken at WPBTX. That's Papa Bravo Tango X-ray.com for my people on my podcast. Ken, it's been a pleasure. We want to have you back sometime, but we thank you so much. And we would love to have you any other time. So if you are ever in Virginia, Washington, D.C. area, let us know. We'd love for you to come to the Don't Unfriend Me studio and let us have a drink or two with you and have you on, my friend. Okay?
I appreciate it. I'm leaving Friday. My wife has planned a trip for 2 years. We're going to go travel around Scotland and Ireland.
Oh, you'll like it.
I will tell you, when I agreed to go, I said July, it's going to be nice and hot. And then I discovered it's never nice and hot in Scotland and Ireland. So I'm going to be a whiny baby for 10 days and complaining about how cold I am.
Can I please give you a couple pieces of advice from somebody who's been there? Before you go I'm sorry, that wasn't rhetorical, but so let me make it not rhetorical. Would that be okay if I give you a couple pieces of advice?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, great. One is that before you go to the bar, you want to make sure you've eaten something that is palatable because bar food in Ireland you think would be amazing. It sucks. Second, there's only one type of Guinness in Europe. And that is CO2 injected Guinness. No. You haven't never had Guinness. You don't have Guinness.
I don't drink, so I probably will be 10 days from not having drank anything.
Don't make me mad. Go over there and have just one CO2 Guinness. It is
get you a pint.
Remember, I get in trouble being sober. I guarantee I get in trouble. I will be dancing naked in the street.
That's okay. That's totally acceptable. And that was my third thing. Make sure you dance naked in the street. So, all right, brother. Good to talk to you. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, guys.
All right, man. We'll talk soon.
It was really good to meet you.
Yeah, it was. You're a good man. Thank you, sir. Bye.